Welcome to episode 21 of Project 250, a weekly chronicle of the people, places, and events of the American Revolution in the order they occurred. So, without further ado, here's what was happening 250 years ago this week, May 25th to 31st, 1775. Last week, as you may recall, at St. John's, Quebec, Ethan Allen, after several warnings of British reinforcements, finally withdrew to Crown Point and eventually to Fort Ticonderoga. Later that same day, May 18th, Congress learned of the capture of Ticonderoga and that British reinforcements were on their way to North America. On May 19th, Colonel Dudley Templar, British commander at Montreal, issued a call for volunteers for the city's defense. Only about 50 men answered the call. Moses Hazen, a retired British officer, rode to Quebec City, where he informed General Guy Carleton of the engagements at St. John's. On May 21st, at the Battle of Grape Island, a small force of British troops landed in search of hay for their horses, only to be driven off by members of the Hingham militia. On May 23rd, the first session of the New Jersey Provincial Congress began in Trenton. Finally, Peyton Randolph resigned as president of the Continental Congress and was replaced by John Hancock. This week begins on an ominous note with the arrival, on May 25th, of about 4,500 British reinforcements at Boston aboard the frigate HMS Cerberus. Along with the troops and their officers were Generals William Howe, John Burgoyne, and Henry Clinton. Almost immediately upon their arrival, the three officers began formulating plans to break out of the besieged city, with General Burgoyne even boasting,
"Let us get in, and we'll soon find elbow room."
The following day, on May 26th, the Continental Congress received the conciliatory resolution from the New Jersey Assembly. This resolution, passed by Parliament back in February, would have exempted from all taxes except those regulating commerce, any colony contributing to public defense and supporting civil government and the administration of justice, pending the approval of Crown and Parliament. The resolution was referred to the Committee of the Whole. For the moment, Congress adopted 4 resolutions urging the colonies to begin preparations for defense against any attempts by the British government to implement, quote, various unconstitutional and oppressive laws concerning taxation in America. At the same time, with a sincere desire for fair reconciliation, they called upon the colonies to present a petition to His Majesty and to begin negotiations to resolve the ongoing disputes between Great Britain and the colonies. Finally, Congress resolved to write a letter to the people of Canada, with John Jay, Samuel Adams, and Silas Deane tasked with preparing the letter. On May 27th, in Boston, the so-called Provision War entered a more contentious phase with the Battle of Chelsea Creek. This battle focused on 2 adjacent islands, Hog Island and Noddle's Island, located northeast of Boston, where large numbers of sheep, cattle, and horses grazed. To deny the British access to these animals, about 600 militiamen from Sudbury and Dunbarton, New Hampshire, waded to Hog Island and drove off the livestock. The Americans then moved on to Noddle's Island, where they not only seized more livestock, but also set a barn full of hay on fire. Around 2 p.m., Admiral Samuel Graves, having been notified of smoke rising from Noddle's Island, ordered his nephew, Lieutenant Thomas Graves, to take the schooner Diana up Chelsea Creek to prevent the rebels from escaping, while Admiral Graves dispatched a party of Marines to Noddle's Island. By 10 p.m. that night, the rebels, reinforced by troops under General Israel Putnam, had not only driven the livestock from both islands, but had also put a squad of Royal Marines to flight. The situation worsened for the British when the schooner Diana ran aground near the village of Winnisimet on the north shore of Chelsea Creek. Lieutenant Graves and his men attempted to drag the schooner free, but when the Diana rolled onto her side, they had no choice but to abandon her. The Americans then plundered the Diana of her guns, rigging, and other equipment before setting her on fire. Around 3 a.m., the fire reached her powder magazine, causing the Diana to explode. For Admiral Graves and his nephew, the Battle of Chelsea Creek was an embarrassing defeat, not least of all because the elder Graves, at the time of the raid, had been celebrating his recent promotion to vice admiral. For the Americans, it was an unexpected triumph. At least 2 British Marines were killed, although the Americans claimed dozens more. American casualties were minimal, with only 4 wounded. More importantly, the Americans seized 4 4-pound cannons, 12 swivel guns from the Diana, and ironwork from the ship. While it had been a clear American victory, the clash at Chelsea Creek consumed a significant amount of gunpowder but did little to alleviate the ongoing shortage of that commodity. On May 28th, the first pro-American accounts of the battles at Lexington and Concord arrived in London, carried by Captain John Derby of the vessel Quero. The following day, in Philadelphia, Congress approved a draft of a letter to the oppressed inhabitants of Canada, which condemned the civil government established by the Quebec Act, labeling it as tyranny and calling on Canadians to join the rebellion. It appealed to Canadians as friends sharing common interests with the other colonies, while cautioning them not to, quote, reduce us to the disagreeable necessity of treating you as enemies. Ultimately, the letter had limited impact. The American cause would garner little support in Quebec, ultimately raising 2 Continental Army regiments. Also on May 29th, Benedict Arnold wrote to the Continental Congress and Massachusetts Provincial Congress, protesting against a proposal to abandon Ticonderoga and relocate all the guns and supplies to the south end of Lake George, a course of action that Arnold believed would render the northern border vulnerable to the ravages of the enemy. That same day, Arnold communicated with New York's Provincial Congress, providing detailed information on the number of men and supplies required to hold Ticonderoga and Crown Point. Ethan Allen also opposed abandoning the forts and wrote to the New York Provincial Congress expressing his views on the matter. Meanwhile, in London, as Captain Derby's pro-American account of Lexington and Concord circulated throughout the city, Lord North and other ministers were described as being in total confusion and consternation about the situation in North America. In an effort to calm public concerns, the Secretary of State, Lord Dartmouth, issued a statement insisting that the American account was not to be believed. On May 30th, at the Continental Congress, Pennsylvania delegate Thomas Willing informed Congress that he had shown a letter to Benjamin Franklin, alleged to be a proposal by Lord North for reconciliation, and that Franklin had verified its authenticity. That same day, at Chelsea Creek, near Boston Harbor, American troops returned to the wrecked vessel Diana and carried off several hundred sheep and some cattle and horses. On May 31st, the Mecklenburg Resolves, also known as the Charlottetown Resolves, and not to be confused with the Mecklenburg Declaration of Independence, were passed at Charlotte, North Carolina. Although these resolves did not explicitly declare independence, they recognized the authority of the Provincial Congress, annulled all laws originating from the King and Parliament, and denied the Crown's sovereignty in North Carolina and all other American colonies. North Carolina became the first colony to make such a declaration. Later that same day, Josiah Martin, North Carolina's royal governor, took the hint and fled Tryon Palace during the night, escaping to Fort Johnston on the Cape Fear River, with Patriot forces hot on his tail. Also on May 31st, the Continental Congress reversed its previous policy, resolving that Connecticut should be requested to send reinforcements to Crown Point and Ticonderoga, and that New York should be asked to provide supplies to both locations. And that's the way it was 250 years ago this week. If you enjoyed this video, please tell a friend. And if you like what you see on this channel, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. You can also check us out on Facebook and Twitter, or X, as well as on Substack. Thank you for watching.